Thank you, Sanjay. And yesterday I started by saying Om Ganeshaya Namah. Today I will do what Arvind family does. They usually say Jai Gajanan. They are follower of Jai Gajanan Maharaj of Shegao. So Jai Gajanan to all of you. I'm Swati Dandekar, and it's nice to see all of you here, especially my close friends who have been there for my support system for, like Ravi Tilak, Sanjay Puri, आपका मेरा जगदीश आपका नाम है, but our last name I'm भूल गए, Sevani, Jagdish ji, Sevani, they all have been there for me for a long, long time. So thank you and good afternoon, Jai Gajanan, my brothers and sisters. Today's topic is training, mentoring, and developing support system when you want to run for a political office. I tell when young people come to me, they ask me, how do we become a legislator, or how do we go on a board member, become a board member? I tell them, start with a passion. Everybody's passion is different. My passion was education. I was a stay-at-home mom with 2 boys at home, and I was so focused on seva of education. I used to tutor young men and women every day, those who could not afford a tutor in chemistry, biology, and mathematics. And I did that without pay. Nobody paid me a dime to do that. And the only thing I had asked the school district to do is I will tutor only a child who cannot afford a science private tutor. So that was my only reason, because I thought if the parents are well-to-do, those kids will be able to afford a tutor in chemistry and biology and mathematics. So that was my only caveat I had. So when you have, and I'm going to give you this small life story of mine. If you have that passion, the passion of education, I used to go and teach all these young men and women chemistry, biology, mathematics, and then it was very interesting. They would tell me to do a few other things for them. And also, when I was tutoring them, they would tell me and correct me that I was not pronouncing the English words right. They used to say, that's not how we Americans do. And they would correct me. And that is important, because not only I was teaching them, they were teaching me. And through them, unknowingly, I developed a support system. And while I was doing all this tutoring, the school district thought that because I was spending so much of my time and energy in all these students, they would send me to different leadership programs as a volunteer worker. And without knowing, somebody else was mentoring me. So to the young people, find your passion, put your heart and soul in it, and you will find right people to guide you through this maze. So when I was doing this, and I did talk about this story yesterday, I found out that in 1990s, the Linmar School District, that's where my boys went and that's where I tutored, were changing the curriculum. They were making this curriculum weaker in sciences. And I was the first one to notice it, because I was right there. So I went and started complaining to the teachers and said, why are we doing this? Why are we changing the curriculum? Our school district is so good in sciences. They said, Swati, we really don't know what we should do. You should go to the principal. So I went to the principal because I had that relationship to do that. It was easy for me to pick up the phone and call the principal. And the principal said, Swati, I don't know what to say to you, but it's coming from the administration. Now that was a problem. I didn't have a good relationship with administrators, but I called them and they knew that I used to be there every day. They were kind enough to give me time to see them. But when I went in front of the administrators, they told me, that's how it is. You have to get used to it. But I decided I was not going to get used to it. I had developed my support system by doing volunteer work. I went to all my friends and said, this is what is happening in our school district. Why should we let administrators weaken our school systems? So basically they told me that Swati, you do whatever you think is right thing for the students, and we will be there for you. That was my support system. So I remember when I went to the superintendent of the school district and told him that I do not like what is happening, he told me that administrators had already told him that I was creating problems for them. And he said, so what's your next plan? And I said, my next plan is to come to the school board. And I had not thought about this, but he said, well, as you know, our conference room can hold only 50 people, the board conference room. If it's more than 50 people, please do let me know because we'll have to move to an auditorium. I had not thought of that. And I said, okay, then what I'll do is I called all my friends who I was telling what was happening and said, you all have to show up. To make long story short, all of them showed up and had called me next day that they were coming with 10 people. So instead of 50 people, on Monday and I have said this story at Ravi's house so many times, I had 200 people on the first day. It changed my life because I gave a speech and told the school board member why the sciences were weakening. And again, making long story short, when things started happening, the board realized that I have leadership, and they are the ones who asked me. The president of the board said, Swati, if you think that you know so much about education, you should run for school board. And by that time, we had like 750 people coming to those board meetings. And I was so passionate, and I said, of course I will do it. And there was a roar of applause. And I looked at Arvind and I said, what happened? And he said, you just announced that you are running for school board. So the passion is important. But there's one thing I have to tell you. One thing led to another, and I ran for Iowa House. And I had friends like Ravi and Jagdish and Sanjay and a few other people who are here, who I don't see where they are, who supported me in my political career. But now I think you have to raise more money. It's a lot more demanding. So when you find out that a young man or woman wants to run for an office, I think check them out for their passion. Check them out. Are they the good leaders? But once you decide, yes, they are going to represent you, then please, whatever you can afford, write a check to them, because that is very, very important. And with that, I know I have a few seconds left, but my advice to all of you is, when a young man or woman who comes to you and says that I want to run for office, check them out for their passion, what they're going to do, and please stand behind them because we are their support system. Thank you.
can definitely attest to Swati's passion, having worked with her for many, many years. So there's no doubt about that. So to check, the next one would be Dr. Vindhya Persaud and find out her passion. So please come on over. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters all, Sadar Pranam, Sitaram to you. It is indeed an honor and a humbling experience to be able to share my perspective from the unique vantage point of being a Caribbean, South American, female, Hindu politician. It sounds like a mouthful, doesn't it? But when my grandfather went to Guyana, which is in South America, I've had to correct everyone who keeps telling me I'm from Ghana, by the way. So Guyana is in South America. And just to help you with some geography, Brazil, Venezuela, Suriname, those are our neighbors. So when my grandfather left Bhanot and went to Guyana as an indentured immigrant, like so many others, for a better life, little did he imagine that his son, and then later his granddaughter, would step into the political arena. And the history that I have is shared by the Caribbean neighbors, where people migrated in search of a better life, where they eked out a life, carved a life, endured hardship, surmounted their vicissitudes, triumphed over the impediments and obstacles that strewed their paths, as they tried to challenge political turbulence, ethnic problems, and in some cases even religious conflict. But my story might be in another part of the world, but I know that every one of you, wherever you find yourself, relate to some of these things in one way or another. That's why we're here in this conference and we're dealing with this issue. But I think there is always optimism and hope, and you have definitely reposed your confidence in this generation and generation next to change the way the world sees, change the way people look at each other, and more so to change the way we live with each other. Before coming to speak with you this afternoon, I took some time, and I traveled not too far from here, but 125 years back, and went to the Art Institute of Chicago. I wanted to feel what that simple monk felt when he delivered an address. And without the advent and the aid of ICT, the power of his words reverberated to us today and will continue to inspire and influence generations way beyond us. And what I did is I read his speech loudly in a very empty auditorium. And it invigorated me because the words had so much of vibration, positive vibration, which we need in the world today as future leaders, as people who can change, who can transform, and who can shift the dynamics of the world in which we live. And those words were simply this. You probably read it, but to me they were magical today. It said, harmony and peace and not dissension, assimilation and not destruction. And the essence of what he said was that as a people, as a Hindu people, as people across the world, we should see none as inferior, none as lesser than us, none beneath us, and we should aim for unity and brotherhood. And I would like to change one little thing that he said. He talked about tolerance, but as a political leader, I never use that word. I speak of mutual respect and understanding instead. And I think if we can, as leaders, change the way people look at each other beyond the borders or within the borders of where they find themselves, and change weapons, exchange those weapons instead for the power of truth, for integrity, for honesty, for compassion, for love, and for unity. What a world this would be. We stand as the custodians of a beautiful principle, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, but do we live it? Or do we continue to see the differences which fragment what we consider a global village? To be a future leader, to be a leader, one must not only have passion, academics, a profession maybe, but one must couple that with spiritual upliftment. And I believe if we are to create the world we want for generation next, each one of us must see ourselves as a leader, an ambassador, and someone who can not only inspire and influence, but awe-spire. I don't know if I coined that word myself, but it sounds good, so I hope you'll use it. So, today, how difficult it is for young leaders. It is difficult. One, you are charging against traditions and customs as old as time. You are maybe standing up and sharing your own view and perspective and speaking to people who have years of experience behind their names, who have a standing in the community and who perhaps see the world very differently from the way you do, and perhaps have not experienced the challenges and the things which the modern world is throwing fast at you. How do you deal with it? Simply, patience, many explanations, perseverance, and a large dose of humility. It'll get you everywhere. So when we speak of the politicians of today, I'm sitting as one of the few women in my country, in fact, one of, if not, the only Hindu woman in the parliament in which I come from. I think it is important that I create the space for more to follow me, even though I have recently stepped into the arena. But what I do, what I say, how I interact, how I react, how I represent, will define what the next generation will do. And that is incredibly important. It's also important for the previous generation and the older generation to realize they need to make space for us. They need to allow us to have a voice, and sometimes for us to have the voice that may not always agree with what they say. In fact, it is important for us to always consult, to have consultations. Even if we preside over those consultations, we must be able to expunge fear in those around us so they feel free to voice their perspectives and share their opinions. For someone who speaks without fear and says what they truly think and not what is expected of them and what people want them to say, or they do it for political opportunity or for agendas to suit a particular purpose, that fearless person who can truly say what they mean, but more importantly, speak the truth, that is the politician of today and tomorrow. And that is what we must all attempt to be, if we're not that already. I do believe also we must allow there to be true equality. Equality in the sense that young people must not merely be window dressing, but their voices and their presence is important as they will decide what their tomorrow will be. I also feel, as a female politician, that there must be space for women. In the country that I live in, too few women want to step into the arena of politics because of perhaps socialization, traditional beliefs, customs and culture. Yes, even though we may be part of what I call the disconnected diaspora, because sometimes India feels so far away from us, even though we reach out. Even though we may be far away geographically and we may be the disconnected diaspora, those traditions and customs are still there and may limit or confine us, and we may not be able to see ourselves as being part of the whole, because every voice is necessary, every voice is important, every opinion matters, and everyone should be given that right to express themselves. So I would like to see the enabling environment to have more women participate in the political world. I was lucky because my father was the longest serving parliamentarian, but that comes at its own price. Because when I went into the parliament the first day, the question was asked, can she even speak? Would she be able to follow in her father's footsteps? Who knows? But what I was able to do was to be an independent voice, even in the party in which I stand, and unapologetically so. I say it, I mean it, I talk it, I walk it. And that's what we need in the politics of today. Today, I would like to say that we all have many challenges in our country. There's turmoil, there's turbulence, there is violence, and sometimes we throw up our hands in the air, or sometimes we want to fight, or sometimes we get very angry. But I want to tell you this. If you're in the political world and you're enabling the generation next, be balanced, be calm, be mature in your thinking, be reasonable and rational as you come to a conclusion that involves consensus and the best possible outcome for everyone. It should never be winner take all. It should never be individual politics. But it should be exactly as Swami Vivekananda asked us to do. Live together, be together, and do good for all humanity. I thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Dr. Vindhya, for those wonderful remarks. Now we'll have Shri Pranav Bhanot from UK. To tell us about his engagement. Thank you.
Namaste. Srimati Chair Swati Dandekar, respected panel members, Mania Niraj Shah, President, HSS UK, Mania Drishti Ji, NHSF President, respected conference. I've been asked to speak to you for the next 10 minutes about the challenges that are faced by politicians, not just in the UK, but around the world. As a young boy, I was born in the suburb of East London. There were few things that excited me more than on a Sunday afternoon being taken to Ramayana class by my mother. Each week, the teacher would describe a different episode of the epic story, which was gripping, and would often leave my classmates and I excited to know what would happen during the next week's episode. The qualities demonstrated by Shri Ram in many ways would have made him the perfect politician. Not least, his integrity to his father, his bravery towards his wife, the sacrifice to his kingdom, and the commitment to doing the right thing. With thousands, if not millions, of Hindus learning about the core qualities of Shri Ram Bhagwan, it makes you wonder why such few Hindus entered the political world. And by politics, I don't just mean elected politics, but non-elected politics, people going for public positions of responsibility. In the recent UK Hindu politics survey, where we asked Hindus of different socio-economic backgrounds and ages a variety of questions about their political engagement, participants were asked whether more Hindus should get involved in UK politics, of which 80% of our participants said yes. Next slide. You might not clap after the next slide. Interestingly, almost the same number, 77% of participants, were unsure or would never stand in political elections themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and conference, this brings me to the first and potentially most important challenge facing aspiring and elected politicians in the United Kingdom. And it goes like this. Let Ram be born. Let Ram exist, let Ram work. But not in my house, not in my name, and not in my family. Shortly after standing in the London local elections earlier this year, I was at a community function where I was approached by an auntie, and we all know these Hindu Indian aunties that get away with grabbing your cheeks as if they're very proud. I'm sure there's many in this audience. And she goes to me, I'm going to try doing an Indian accent. Oh Pranav, I am so proud of you. We need more people like you standing in politics. I said, Auntie, I completely agree. Look, you've got a son. He can come with me to the next party political meeting. I'm sure I can find a way to get him more involved. Unfortunately, her face expression changed. Her voice changed. And she goes, my son, no, he is a lawyer. He is looking for a promotion. No, he's not ready. Conference, it is, you laugh. But it is here, which is where the key fundamental issue lies. We all have that one Hindu auntie in our lives who agrees that we need more politicians. She will advocate, congratulate, motivate others to stand, but not in her home, not in her name, and not in her family. And I believe this comes down to how the vast majority of Hindus and human beings measure success. Success appears to be defined by the amount of money one has, the dollar bills, the pound coins, but not by the number of people that one person is making a difference to. So I believe there needs to be a paradigm shift in how success is defined, not just with Hindus, but with humanity as a whole. The importance and the wealth that comes from service and the qualities of Shri Ram Bhagwan are all very well. But we've got to put the principles into practice. And we have to overcome the notion that let Ram Bhagwan exist, but not in my home. This leads me to my second challenge. Hindu lives in elected positions will not matter until Hindus recognize just how much they matter. Here in the United States, there is a movement advocating Black Lives Matter, and I'm sure Chair would know very well about it. And this highlights the race discrimination that exists between black people and other people, white people in particular. Last week saw the funeral of the renowned worldwide singer Aretha Franklin. And for anyone who had an opportunity to watch the funeral, like I did, will note that one person came up and said, no, black lives do not matter. Black lives do not matter until black people stop killing each other and respecting each other. The message was a strong one and equally applies to Hindus. Hindu lives in elected positions should matter, but will not matter and cannot matter until Hindus themselves realize how much it has to matter. It is only when Hindus see the elected positions matter will the rest of the world realize how important it is to have a strong Hindu voice on the decision-making table. If a Hindu does not value the importance of another Hindu taking up a position of elected responsibility, tell me, conference, why should the rest of the world care? Almost every Hindu politician I've spoken to in the UK has said one thing, and perhaps my panel will agree. For every one step a Hindu politician makes, there are 3 Hindus there ready to pull them back. I find that there is a lack of unity and loyalty among Hindus supporting fellow Hindu politicians. Now, don't get me wrong, conference. I do not for 1 minute believe that Hindus should blindly follow and elect another Hindu. No. I believe people should be elected on merit. However, I certainly feel that there could be a better allegiance, alliance, and feeling that he or she is one of us. And we should vote for him, or we should support him, similar to what Chair Lady said earlier today. In my last election, one of my opponents was a Jewish. The other one was a Muslim. These candidates were so confident that the Muslims would vote for them and the Jewish people would vote for them, they didn't even knock on their doors. My wife at the front and I knocked on every single Hindu door 3 times. At best, I got disinterest. At worst, I got hostility. Therefore, Hindu lives in elected positions do matter. But unless and until there is a realization of this among our own community, unfortunately, Hindu lives in elected positions simply will not matter to the rest of the world. Which brings me to my third and final point. What I call the Hindu inferiority complex, and I know it's been talked about at other conferences. Having Hindu politicians in elected positions is not enough. Conference, what use is it of giving a Hindu such honour if an elected candidate is Hindu on paper but confused in nature? What use is a Hindu politician who will not vote or take a stand for issues which are of crucial importance to fellow Hindus? What use is it to have a Hindu in an elected role but won't stand up for Hindu Dharm as their guiding light when making decisions? What use is it having a Hindu in politics if they won't be proud to say that they're a Hindu? I believe a challenge which exists in our community and many other communities is the Hindu inferiority complex. By this, I mean that politicians are not publicly confident in declaring that they're a Hindu or advocating the principles of Hindu Dharm when making decisions. A possibility could be because of racism. I'm from a country where the majority are white Christian. Not everyone feels confident in saying that they're a brown Hindu with such a backdrop, particularly when Hindus only make up 1% of the population. The Hindu inferiority complex can also manifest in a different way. Voters, and my panel may agree, will only vote for candidates that they can relate to. With Hindus making up a population of just under 1% in the UK, Hindu politicians often feel, why should they tone down any indication that they're Hindu? After all, if they say they're a Hindu, that might not get them more votes. Therefore, by adopting this approach, we need to ensure that Hindus can be confident that they're Hindus as well as politicians. The two shouldn't be separate. So, I have a 0 minutes up, so I'm going to conclude. I'm not going to just focus on the challenges, and I conclude with just a couple of suggestions on how we can improve things. I believe it's the current job of the current generation of Hindus to train the next generation of Hindus in at least two areas. The first is to train the new generation on the principles of Hindu Dharm and how they can be practically applied in the 21st century. The second is to adopt skills to get elected. And this forms the backdrop of why I wanted to put together a book. I stood in an election and I didn't win, but I wanted to put down how I believe I could have won. Because just because I wasn't successful, I would like other people to be successful. And my panel may agree here. If you're a brown Hindu standing against a Christian opponent, you've got to be the best. Because you are up against a gradient. And that is one of my motivations for writing this book. So I hope, and there's a copy of the book on every single row, so do take one. So I hope that this conference can be used as a springboard for political mentoring, for a global Hindu political network to form. And potentially, you may find it useful to maybe give this book to somebody who might be willing to stand in an election, any election, at university, college, or school, or in the workplace. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, my last sentence would be, democracy works better when every group feels that they have a stake in it. We need to arise and awake now to smash the glass ceilings for a future generation of Hindu politicians, to enable the principles of Hindu Dharm to be used to direct national and international policy making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pranav. That was very, very enlightening. Hindu lives do matter. You're absolutely right. And the Hindu inferiority complex, I would really like to hear at the end of our discussion some comments from the panel, and I'm sure there will be a lot of Q&A, because having dealt with elected leaders, and in this conference itself, there have been folks who have been targeted by other folks to not attend, and there have been people who have elected not to attend, and they happen to be Hindu. And so we'd love to hear your perspective. But before that, we have Shri Jitendra Diganvker, who is, will come and talk about why Hindu lives do matter.
I think my subject is balancing strong Hindu voice and how is a political viable candidate. Okay. Friends, it's my honor and privilege to be here. I would like to welcome all of you in my district. I'm running for U.S. House of Congress 8 district, and this venue is part of my district. So welcome all to my hall. This whole process is my passion. I remember, and I'm so proud today that my son is here, and I told him that you have to be here, so by force he is here. But my father took me in 1977 to one of the RSS Sabha, and since then, I'm a strong Hindu. I do care and I do respect and I learn to respect. And because of that whole value system, I'm here today. It is very, very, very important that it's not about just being a Hindu. It just doesn't matter who you are, but what grounds you are standing on and how you protect that. I remember I started my journey in my college days, and people are confused. They all are Hindu in India. And they're confused whether it's a college election was happening and, oh, I'm going to lose, I'm not going to go for it. And my inner voice said, stand up and get going. I stood up, I ran for office, and I won. Second year won. And then third year comes college president election. And a lot of my professors says, Jitendra, you shouldn't do it. My family say you didn't do it. And I had a passion to serve. Your passion is your asset. Make no mistake. Your passion is your asset. It's not somebody else's courtesy. I won that election with 6 votes. I remember how and what I did. But long story short, at the age of 16, I put my boots on ground. I walk in the street. And when I came in US in 1995, I'm already a proud Hindu. Today I'm a proud Hindu American. I have no regret to say that I am here to announce and say I'm a Hindu candidate. I'm running for political office on the Republican Party. And I will say, my fellow friends, when I talk to different other communities, they say, we want to know what are you going to do for our community. I went to one of the Jewish path, and they want to know what are you going to do for Israel and what are you going to do for Jewish community. So they want to know. And I am telling you as a Hindu candidate, I will stand for Hindus globally. Not just my home in Chicago, not just in India, but globally. And that's the reason I'm running for office. Because Hindu voice do matter. And why? I wanted to go through some numbers here so we all know. I'm sure how Hindu community have suffered in thousands of years. I just wanted to give you some facts here that we have seen in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, ethnic cleansing happen, Sri Lanka, and nobody is there to represent us, our pain. Nobody is there to talk about us. And that made me realize that how important it is that strong Hindu voice is needed. And we are in America today. How many here is from America? So we have decent number here. We are in one of the greatest country on the world today. American House of Congress, House of Representatives. Congress decided what to do on what issue, whether it's religion or anything. It doesn't matter what they decide in Washington. So we must represent, we are 5% in USA, in Indian Americans, and most of them are Hindu.
It's hardly 1%.
Now, if you see the voting population overall, more than that, I think we need to find the numbers, check the numbers.
4 million, less than 4 million.
Yeah, 4 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes a good number. And when I see that number is enough for us to have enough elected officials. Either party doesn't matter, whether you are a Democrat or Republican doesn't matter. But what can you do for Hindus? When it comes to Hindu cause, Hindu community, Hindu temples, Hindu culture, how you are going to represent us in the education level, on the school board, like Swati mentioned, how and what are you going to do for Hindus? That does matter. And if you have no answer for that, sorry. This event, we have invited many Hindu elected officials and many Hindu leaders, and the last minute, they backed out. Now think about it this way. When they need money and vote to fight an election, they come to Hindu. Oh, I'm Hindu, I'm Indian, please vote for me, please give me the money, give me the resources. Those spineless Hindus, we don't need them anyway. Those spineless Hindus are much more harmful than what they can do for you and how they can represent you. Today, they are Hindu, tomorrow they are not Hindu. And next day, they don't know who they are. So we have to get out of a yes, no, maybe mode. Either you are Hindu today, you have to Hindu tomorrow. I remember I support somebody more than 15 years, knowing that he is a fellow Indian, fellow Hindu. I'm not going to name the name, you'll figure out. At some point of time, he says, JD, you are too close to Hindu cause and Hindu community and Hindu thing. You have to step back a little bit. When he needs money, he goes to Hindus. He needs vote, he goes to Hindus. And when it comes to public image, he says to her, you are too Hindu, you have to back out a little bit. And then California textbook incident happened, and I have informed him, this is something going on, you must do something about it. He says, don't pull me into this. I don't want to touch it. Now those kind of things that you are Hindu today, you are not Hindu tomorrow, that's not fair. And we are not just talking here on this forum, just US issue. We are representing global Hindu identity, global Hindu pride. Global Hindu existence is very much important today. And if we don't stand up today, tomorrow you don't know what's going to happen. Because thousands of years ago, there was no law, there was no system, there was no process. You have a better weapons, you go for war, you win, you are the warrior, you are the king. But today we have legal process, we have system. There are so many legalities involved. So we must be organized, we must come together, we must work together. We have to think collectively, and you may work independently, like what yesterday Mohanji said. You think collectively and work independently. So we respect each other, we learn to respect each other, and still we work together. So we must achieve our goal together, that how we respect Hindu community globally, we can increase our political presence, because that's the only way. If you don't have a seat on the table, they don't want to know who you are. They will take your money, they will take your vote, but they don't want to know who you are. So you have to have the seat on the table. And when you are on the table, your goal is to increase that seat for your fellow Hindu. And that we don't have in our community yet, but it will come. I have faith, it will come. Okay, so that is one thing. And that comes to my second point. Viable candidate. When you know the concern, when you know the pain, when you know what is your cause, when you know who you are internally, nobody will come and tell you you are viable. You have to make yourself viable. You have to make that move. You must prove yourself viable. And when you know you are viable, whole world know who you are. And you will be the victorious. Let's do it together. Let's help the Hindu community globally, and let's be the voice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Jitendra for those rousing comments. We're going to have a Q&A. I think there have been several topics that have been touched by the panelists. Some, very, very interesting ones. And I'm hoping that we get a good interaction from our audience. But again, questions please. Comments has room for later because our speakers will be here for you to discuss, give your thought process, dialogue, etc. But here it's a Q&A session, so let's begin. If you can introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Jitendra. Question is for the young man from UK. I know you must have a lot of Sikh friends, Muslim friends in your community, but being Hindu, when you approach them for a vote or for a sport, telling them you're a Hindu, what is the reaction?
Pranav?
Rinda, thank you very much for the question. It's a good one. When I fought my last election, it was on issues that mattered in the community in which I was fighting. My first point wouldn't be that I'm a Hindu. That was a given. I'm aware Prakriya, they know that. The point is that when you're standing in politics, you're there to make a difference to an area. And that's what I wanted to be selected on. I didn't want to be selected based on the fact that I was a Hindu and they may be Hindu. I wanted to be selected on the basis that I was the right candidate to make the right change that would make lives better for the people that I wanted to represent. So the short answer is they didn't mind the fact that I was a Hindu, because what they were most interested in was what difference could I make in their lives to make their lives better. And that is what really is a fundamental purpose of politics. It's to be the best you can be, to give other people the best lives that they can get, so we live in the best community possible.
Thank you.
I agree with Pranav, and in my own experience, I have met many people with different faiths, Christians, Hindu, Sikh community, Muslim community, blacks, African American community, and it matters on how you treat them, how you talk to them, how is your relation with them. See, at the religion level, a lot of differences you may see, but what you as a person is most important, how you represent them. And I have personal experience that I'm running on a Republican ticket, and I talk to many of my Democrat friends, and they are Muslim, and they are African Americans. And they says genuinely, JD, party doesn't matter for us. You are my friend, and I'll be with you. So I want all my friends and all the political our colleagues here, and they all know that. So how we treat them, that's more important. And I think at this point, I just missed one point I wanted to say. We as a strong, concerned Hindu community, we must involve in the process, whether you belong to any temple, any organization, anywhere. Our community should vote, should register to vote, and vote that is not political, that is very neutral. And I think the way we do the Aarti and Puja every day in our temple every week, every time, I think this kind of thinking, I think should also evolve. Because this is not political. We are empowering our community at the different level.
Thank you.
Hello. Namaste, I am Jigar Inamdar from Gujarat. My question is to all the speakers, anyone can answer. How important that formal training part in public life, according to all of you, and why this factor is absent everywhere? I asked this question in another words yesterday, and I got the answer that no, we do not have this type of formal education system. So I just want to ask all of you that what is the importance, how important this part is, and why it is absent everywhere?
He's talking about a formal political program, an education program.
Thank you for the question. I think it has merit to have formal political education, but it should not be the only thing that defines a politician, because people bring many different skills, experiences, and many value systems to the table. So while someone may not be formally trained in political science, they may have excellent experience working with the grassroots and may have advocacy skills where they can represent the community which elected them in a way that is understood, in a way that is accepted, and in a way that can influence change. So I don't think that is the only thing or the most important thing, but if that comes along with the territory, that's an asset or an added benefit. So I hope that answers your question. But in the world in which we live in, not everyone has access to formal political education, and you don't want to exclude people who can bring something to the table and bring benefit to their community because they do not have that formal political training. Thank you.
I have one. My statement will be, I think passion plays more influence when you go and knock on doors. Like yesterday I said, Arvind and I, we knocked on 7,000 doors for the first time I ran for the office. They saw the passion in me, they saw the dedication in me, and going back to your question, sir, they did not ask me if I'm Hindu or not. When my opponent, when she found out that a Democrat was winning from a Republican district, she decided to tell the world that I'm Hindu. And I said, well, yes, I am. And they said, that's okay. We know she will work hard for us. So what Pranav said is right. It's the issue and the caring you show is more important. I got my training, official training, to tell you the truth, after I was elected, how to be a good speaker. Thank you.
Pranav,
Hello, here.
just 1 second. Pranav, did you want to add?
I think every country have a different legal process, legal thing, technical skill, and I think social media is one common thing that everyone can use everywhere, and I agree with yesterday's answer. So that's the reason.
Hi, Jigraji, I remember your question yesterday. Unfortunately, I was very heavily jet-lagged sitting at the back, so I couldn't, but if I may say so, I don't think as a politician you need to have any academic formal training. The art, I think at its most fundamental, is being able to deal and work with people. And I think my training started at the age of 3 when my dad took me to HSS's Sabha. And you may have people who go there, you may have one in your country, but at its real core, that's what gave me my training. Dealing on a day-to-day basis with other people who went, learning how to public speak. So if you have got any organizations, doesn't have to be Shaka, but anything for youth, if you have any young people that might be interested, get them at a young age going to these kind of organizations. Because, you know, these skills take time. And there are organizations out there that are honing in these skills from a very young age. So get involved. That's my biggest kind of, if there's one take-home message, get involved with an organization, because there are training schemes out there. Yeah, they may not be labeled as politic training skills, but they are very much teaching the skills that are transferable to politics.
Thank you.
I want to add one more thing. I helped somebody who went to Harvard to run for the public office. And I have zero education in this country. I had my bachelor in accounting in India. When I started running the ground today, 12, 15 years ago, that helped me become a candidate today. So that's, you don't need it. You have, the less you know, good it is.
We'll move to
I would request panelists to comment less because we have so many questions.
Yes,
So
thank you guys. Anyway, Dr. Prakash Bharat from New Jersey. My question is, I'm proud to be a Hindu, guys. I don't know why so much negative thinking that saying Hindu. You know, I'm New Jersey. I have no problem. In the white community, if you're Hindu, they are proud. We are peaceful. So be proud to be Hindu. My question to you guys, what Hindu values you introduce to your community to benefit them?
anyone? Swati?
Thank you for the question, and like you, I feel very proud of being a Hindu. And like my colleague on the right, he said people didn't question whether or not he was Hindu. For me, they know I am because I'm the president of the largest Hindu organization in my country. So politically, it's a given. And I think, going back to your question, what Hindu values, I think volunteerism, seva, is fundamental to what you do, whether you're a politician or not. And I encourage young people in particular to engage in seva. So in my community and across the country, we go out into the communities and we work with children who are underprivileged. We also have a literacy drive. So we ensure children are equipped to go back to school. So they're fully outfitted. Our women's group, our youth groups, they go out there and they work to ensure children get back into school. Pretty soon I'm going to start a soup kitchen for children. And I also work with the elderly because part of our Hindu belief is care for the elderly. Also, what I promote is respect and tolerance and also non-violence, because in my country there is a high incidence of domestic violence. So this is something that I speak out very strongly against, and I advocate for women to know their rights and the avenues where they can have safety nets to get out of particularly violent situations. There is a lot more that can be said on this, but I think I want to just touch a little bit on what was said just now. I think it's not only about working for the Hindu community and representing only Hindus. I think it's representing all people who have needs, and I strongly believe in that. Thank you.
I was going to say seva, but I have to tell you, when I was first elected, I talked about that, Hindu priest called me and asked, can I do the first prayers in the Iowa Capitol? And I said yes. And Panditji Pandey, I don't know where he is, I see him all the time, and he came and prayed for all of us, a Hindu prayer for all my colleagues. I'm the only one who is a Hindu there. I'm proud to say I showed them that I'm a proud Hindu, and there are lots of Hindus in Iowa. That's what I did. It's important, and that's why I tell people that be at the table, because it just makes a huge difference. People look at you that you believe in seva and you are.
I think seva and core behaviors of the Hindus. Core behaviors of the Hindus you don't forget.
Yes.
Because seva is given. We have been taught the core behaviors in the community, whether it's Hindu, Muslim, Christian. I beg you all, introduce the core behaviors wherever you get elected. And if you are passionate to stand for election, do that, you will get elected.
We can move to the next question, please.
So my question to the two female panelists. As a member of parliament, my parliament sits a distance away, so I have to get on a plane on a Monday and fly to Cape Town and stay there until Friday and then get back home. So I'm the weekend special mom and wife. So I've made many sacrifices, and I'd like to know from your perspective, what sacrifices have you made in order to be a public rep? And then to the two male panelists, I'm just trying to get a handle on the legislation. So, Jitendra, you are standing as a public rep. Do you have dual citizenship? Have you given up citizenship of India in order to be a citizen, a voting citizen? What are your rights? Because when we get citizens, when permanent residence is granted in my country, that permanent resident, whether it's from India, UK, wherever, cannot vote or stand for public office, especially if they have dual citizenship. Thank you.
So maybe you can address the first question, Swati and Dr. Vindhya.
Okay. Hi. I think my family has sacrificed more for me than I have for them. I do not get to see my grandchildren's birthdays when I want to. Arvind has to eat leftover foods because I cook for him for Monday through Friday and tell him this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, parotas for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I think it's a sacrifice on my family. And that's why I always tell people that I really admire my husband and my 2 boys and my 2 daughter-in-laws and my cute 4 grandchildren for letting their grandmother do what she's doing. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Actually, I don't consider it a sacrifice. I enjoy doing what I do, and the hours just seem to fly by. I just wish there was one hidden day that no one knew about in there, so that I can have some time for myself from time to time. But when you consider the need that lies out there, and when you consider the responsibility that you have, it really takes away the whole concept of sacrifice. And growing up in a political home, I think we got accustomed as children to our father not being always available as every other dad, and our mom was the bedrock in our home, but we never felt deprived because we got great values and the kind of experience in a political home that you ordinarily would not get. So I think it allowed me to move very easily into my own political life and not see it as a sacrifice. I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I'm single and I have no kids, so I don't know if it makes my life easier, but my friends like to say, stay happily single, you do enough.
Dual citizenship.
Yeah. I think, basically we don't have a dual citizens. When we become citizen, we give up Indian citizenship and we accept that. But I want to extend to this question. In my case, my family have sacrificed more than me so I can do what I do today. And I love my wife dearly, and my son is here and he knows that. Without their support, I am not here today. And so it's not just as a family we all have to go through and achieve. And it's again your passion. When you have passion for something to serve, challenges doesn't matter.
Dual citizenship? No dual citizenship. Okay. Yes, sir.
I think that we need a World Hindu Political Institute. I mean that we have our philosophy in Hindu Dharma. And our philosophy is, you have everything in it. You take Bhagavad Gita in day-to-day life, which is very important up to now, very up to date. You take Chanakya philosophy. This is our philosophy, which is the best. We are not taking. We are taking from the other side. I believe that if really we want our young politician to serve not only Hindu. Hindu is not made for Hindu. Hindu is made for humanity. And how best you can serve humanity. And I want to say that I am from Mauritius. Just I'm telling what I think is good. That's I want the feeling. Because I am from Mauritius, a very small island, very poor country. The smallest in Africa, but the best in Africa in every field. Democracy, socio-economic, everything. Why? Because we have given respect to our mother language. Our mother language. And all other languages. So just I want to know, you think that it's good to have World Hindu Political Institute to train our young generation to become a good politician, good leader, and how best he can serve humanity?
I'll answer quickly on behalf of all of them. I will answer on behalf of all of them. I think you should talk to the board of directors. You should talk to the board of directors of Hindu Congress. Because, no, we are not part of it. They are the ones. So I think that they should.
Political science is important.
Okay. Hi, my name is Satish Garmela. I'm an elected official for City Council from Morrisville, and my question is for you, JD. Is we have only 4 people in the U.S. House, and when I'm just doing some research on you, it's ironical that two Hindus running against each other for an election. So why that should happen? Because we have the entire United States. We have only 4 in the U.S. Capital. And why can't we, work together to use someone running from a different district so that we can have more people and not just run against each other?
Sure. Now, I think we have to get out of the mindset that the one Hindu is there and why another Hindu. If one Hindu is not good enough, then you must listen to your heart and stand up. Because whole world don't know. Whole world just know one thing, oh, he's a fellow Hindu and he will represent Hinduism. But this is a public forum and I will make a public statement. 2 years ago when I asked him that California state is doing something on a Hindu book, what you like to do about it? And he says, don't get me involved. So you want to rely on that kind of a Hindu? Or you want to rely on a Hindu who stand up on their ground and fight for you? So Hindus must know and identify what kind of Hindu they should follow and get out of the mindset of, oh, he's a fellow Hindu or this Hindu. No, we want to know who is Hindu, will fight for you, who will stand for you. That's what important. When whole world we are seeing today that China and Russia and every nationality or worldwide, they are a verge of protecting their own identity. So we as American and we in America, we as a Hindu also needs to know, because if we are strong here today, I want stronger Indo-US relation. Because we were not strong here today in America, a few years ago, our own Chief Minister Narendra Modi's visa was denied. And he could only come here as a Prime Minister. So we must know there are some people protesting outside, there are elected officials, spineless politicians, they said they will be part of it and they backed out. And that is absolutely not fair. They have raised millions of dollars from Hindu community, and Hindu communities must know these facts and get organized and channel their own resources behind those who stand up for our cause.
JD, we have to stay on time, so let's take the next question, please.
Namaste all. All I'm sorry, I'm Amar Trivedi. I've sat on various political councils. I'm also part of the Overseas Branch of BJP UK. So our Hindu communities do a lot of good work and encouraging youngsters to get involved in the communities and encouraging, and so as you said, we should be encouraging youth to be involved in politics. But should we be identifying those potential young leaders, potential politicians from an earlier age? Because students taking up politics, or student politics as well, it's very poor in many aspects compared to other communities. So should we be identifying them at a high school or a university age and then getting them through into political circles?
Pranav?
I think that's an excellent question. The short answer is absolutely. There's a risk. Sometimes, by earmarking certain individuals, you may earmark the most vocal. The most vocal might not be the best politician or the best elected representative. So I think you've got to cast your net wide, try and get as many people exposed to as much as possible, whether it is party politics or in any other form of representation. One thing I set up was the Get Me Elected Leadership Network, which brings together anybody who wants to take on any leadership role. And what they will get is emails once a month to give them tips about public speaking, tips about debating, invitations to Parliament in the UK. So just to see, even if you have a remote interest, try to channel it in the right direction. So I completely agree, but we don't want to earmark people saying, oh yes, you're a great talker, you're a great debater, you go in. the fact is I was very shy for most of my school life. I was in the bottom sets for most of it, and I'm sure Swati is nodding her head as well. You know, so yeah, so absolutely, but not to limit ourselves. The most, the people that are actually sometimes the most shy growing up end up being the ones that end up, you know, taking on such roles. So. Yeah.
Swati, you have something?
I also want to make sure that we focus on women. That's my passion now. We have to have women leaders, and we cannot, Hindus cannot forget that.
Next question, please. Namaste, my name is Nagendra Krishnamurthy, and my question is about what is WHC itself and the campaign that is going on against this. In fact, today and yesterday there has been some articles about this, and they're called the speakers of this as militants. In one of the magazines, I think the website, the Wire magazine. So my question is, what's your strategy to counter this, or how can you help make this WHC mainstream? Because the idea is for them to make this as some sort of fringe organization and not as a mainstream one.
I will answer this question very quickly. I know Swami Vivekanandaji very well, and everyone knows, but I think this question, I think they can answer better, because of this is a...
The question is how who can help WHC?
Well, management is working on their side how to counter this kind of question. We as an individual have to stay united and stay as a united force behind organization whenever they request us to do something.
It's the point that they are being done by some absolutely we all know that.
Yeah, but I think what they were asking also, he was asking Jitendra is, when you go out, or if the media is going to hound you, which they will, what is your perspective going in? It's going to be to Pranav, it's going to be to Swati, and it's going to be to Dr. Vindhya too, about participating. Your messaging will go also from these folks, because we are all representative here. What should be our messaging be?
Well, first of all, if somebody asks you, you must tell who you are. Speaker comes later. And me as a speaker, if I say I'm a family man, I'm a businessman, I have no interest in any other activity. If we are here to organize, empower our Sanatan belief. And in a way, I like your question, I agree with you. This whole event become a thermostat. We are generating so much energy. Now we have to channelize that energy in a right direction.
Well, if they ask that question to me, I will tell them I have not seen any militant speeches, so could you please direct me which one you are talking about?
My request would be if you can proactively write to them, either the editor or whatever, and defend or at least say the facts as you see. Because people carry a lot of weight if you post from you. Me as an individual, if it's right, then I'm not going to...
I think by showing up and staying with on
Yeah, I think that's
makes
a
a
big
big
step.
difference.
That's
That
a
is
big
the
step.
step.
I think collectively we need to write to them. We need to take it up and oppose it.
And especially what Jitendra's point was, to the people who have taken millions of dollars from the Hindu community and who backed out at the last minute. I think that's the point that needs to be recognized. Because they will be back again in a few months asking us for money. Anyway, this is going to be the last question.
Oh, last question. There's another one.
Oh, there are two questions.
Okay. My name is Surendra Sharma. My one question is for Pranav, for aspiring British politician, and another question for counterpart of American aspiring politicians. You mentioned rightly or wrongly that what happens in Washington decides the fate of this world. Perhaps Congress deciding how the issue is going to be handled, the world's issue. So I'm just wondering on a serious note, what is the British political thinking and how the American political thinking differ from the British political thinking?
Short. Quick, short.
I must confess, I can't say I'm an expert on the American way of thinking. You're right, Washington, whatever happens in Washington, it does resonate around the world. But I think both countries have their own challenges right now. They're not too dissimilar challenges. I think there is right moving further to the right and to an extent left moving further to the left and a large centre ground. There are shared challenges I think both countries have. Shared solutions I'm sure that can be exchanged. I think there is things we can learn from each other. Both the good and the bad. And I simply don't think I can give you the American perspective, but simply the British perspective on that.
Thank you. Jitendra, just quick.
Just I'm going to will be quick here. This is very in-depth policy matter, but as an American, I would say that we are, as a nation, very responsible. We are in interest of the global peace and all the betterment of all. That is our US focus. So we'll stay on that.
Okay. Last question, please. Afterwards, when you'll get plenty of time with Jitendra to comment for half an hour. Yes.
Hello, namaste. My name is Shri and I'm from London. Your great counts that you've given. My question is around Hindu challenges and your voters will only vote for you when they resonate with your thoughts, your values. What are the Hindu challenges that you face in your area, your demographic? That would be really interesting for us to know. Thank you.
Dr. Vindhya?
Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting one. And I'd like to say, as a Hindu, I think the Ramayana in particular guides me in terms of how I should deliver in a political life. Because if we look at the life of Shri Ram, he clearly defines as a leader how we should present ourselves and represent and mediate and negotiate. So if as a leader, one can engage others and consult widely, then I think the resolution will have most merit. So the challenges you may have is if you're dealing with a particular issue and you're seen as representing a particular grouping. And I do believe that you need to step out of only being Hindu or only being a woman or only being part of a group to represent a wider community so that they feel all interests are represented. And also, the challenges may lie if you have to take a stance against someone who's been there longer than you. And that someone perhaps is a very much recognized Hindu leader or political leader, and you have to take a stance that is very diametrically opposed to that person. So while you may take that stance, I believe if you want to surmount that impediment of not getting your way or your voice heard or being misunderstood, you need to do it respectfully, you need to do it with a great dose of humility. So that probably is another challenge. And as a Hindu woman in particular, I think that's the biggest challenge I've faced, because you are always seen, but you are always dismissed simply because you are a woman, because it is not seen that Hindu women should have equal footing with men. And I think that needs to change. If there's one thing I feel very strongly about, I think that needs to change. Because we need to be represented, because in fact we are the largest voting percentage that elect men or women. And I would like the women in this room to advocate for their sisters in political life, so that someone who understands you, someone who understands your traditions, conventions, and customs, and someone who shared your experiences in life, that person can perhaps speak the language that you want to have there up there for you. So I think being a Hindu woman is a challenge, because you also come with all these customs and traditions you're expected to adhere to. And if you stand up and you are fearless in what you say, and you advocate and you argue and you're in the male domain, then you're seen as someone who's stepping outside of that normal limitation that people place on you. So I think that's the major challenge. But if more women do it, more Hindu women in particular, I think we will have a far way to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
My challenge was what Pranav talked about, or my own community, the Hindu community, would not be there for me. I remember Arvind was making phone calls to the people, the Hindus who live in my district, and they told him flatly on his face that we do not believe in politics, and sorry if Swati decided to go in that, don't count on us. And it was very interesting. 5 days later, when they needed help, phone rang at 12:30 at night, crying, and I did not know how to react to that. But because I'm Hindu, I forgive. I told her. I told her I come from a Hindu family where they say you have to forgive. And I said, I will do everything for your, and I said that the other thing is, it was for her dad. And I said, I was taught to always respect elderly. And I said, that's my dharma. So that was my problem. And if all of those would have voted for me, I would have been a congresswoman today.
Well, I can say there is always tomorrow. And I think lesson learned will start next time. But I think we as a community at the organization level, we have to involve in the process of thinking and inform people that this is arena that we have to step in and support our own people who believe in our cause. Just not as a Hindu, who believe in our cause and stand with us. Like we stand with them, that's believing in cause. That's what I think.
Great. I think we've had a fantastic session. I want you to give a big round of applause for our panelists. We are going to